It's my pleasure this morning to introduce one of Ashtabula's most promising young professionals. Anthony LaCute is a graduate of Cleveland Marshall College of Law with both a law degree and an MBA. His undergraduate degree is from Ashland University, where he earned a BS in Business Administration, graduating first in his business class. Anthony is one of those executives who started at the bottom and worked his way up. When I read his resume, it said he's been working over 20 years. He must have been like 4. We can tell it's a family business. He gained experience as a service technician, a distribution specialist, customer service representative, process analyst, and accounts payable manager. He is currently the Vice President of Sales and Operations for Seeley Medical. He is responsible for the oversight of operations and new business development, which is a challenge in today's ever-changing healthcare environment. He currently serves as a co-chair of the Regulatory Council for the Ohio Association of Medical Equipment Services and is a member of the Regulatory Council for the American Association for Home Care. Anthony is a newlywed, getting married last July, and his mother is a longtime employee of our campus, Teresa Bates. In his spare time, he enjoys spending time with his family and friends and his dog, Beverly. Please welcome Anthony LaCute.
I'm trying to hold a Paul Ryan moment here with my 2 waters, but I'm a little dry this morning, so bear with me. Can everybody hear me okay if I don't stand behind this? Okay, good deal. Well, that was a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Dean Stalker. I couldn't have written it better myself. You were right, I think, in what you said. We're a small family business here in Ashtabula County, have been for a number of years. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity to kind of come and share with you what we do. We're a very unknown industry in general until you actually have to use our services. And to tell a little bit about our story and how we ended up here and why we do what we do, and the way I see our company and the future of healthcare sort of moving. So I welcome questions. Interrupt me at any point in time. I appreciate it. I like it. It'll be a lot more fun for me if we interact instead of me sitting here talking at you. One small addition. I am a newlywed. My mother-in-law is here in the crowd today, 19-year employee of Kent State. And she mentions to me that I better do a really good job or she's going to have to quit. It's pure embarrassment, but she couldn't take it being anymore. Of course, that would put a financial hardship on her, and she would most likely have to move in with me. So, I assure you, some of the best material you could have ever seen in one of your profile breakfasts. So, well, with that, we'll get started. You're welcome anytime, of course. I have a few notes here. I'll probably reference them and come back and forth. I'll probably jump around a lot, which is sort of how I do things. Let's talk a little about what Seeley Medical is. So we are a home medical equipment provider. So I'll use the term HME a lot, or a durable medical equipment provider, which is I'll use those interchangeably. Basically, an acronym is we have a ton in our industry for home medical equipment and durable medical equipment. Those things include a variety of different things, and we'll talk about all of that stuff. But let's talk just briefly about where we came from. So Seeley Medical, my last name is LaCute. We're a 3rd-generation company. Obviously, my last name is in Seeley. That was my mother's maiden name, my grandfather's last name. So he immigrated from England in the very early 50s and started the business through his relationships with doctors in the Cleveland area. He was a mechanic that found a niche working on iron lung machines when polio was a thing. So Jonas Salk sort of put him out of work in the mid-50s, and over time the reliance on those machines became obsolete, wasn't necessary, so his job sort of was obsoleted. And he looked for different work. Physicians that he worked with said, hey, there's this new thing, it's called home health, home medical. We're putting people in homes with certain medical equipment that we couldn't before. Do you have any interest? And he said, well, I don't have a whole lot of options, so sure, let's go for it. 51 years later, which is what we are today, I'll call us a thriving company. We're growing as much as we can in our challenging environment. And we have 150 or so employees with all of our ventures together. And it's a really interesting and great story to be able to tell me personally, kind of coming through that and what he had to do. He did most of the heavy lifting. He and my parents did most of the heavy lifting. I appreciate that very much, and I get to reap some of those benefits now, in my position. My parents came and immigrated. My father's an immigrant from Italy. Mom was born here, moved to Canada, and then they both immigrated down from Canada in '77. So I'm a U.S. and Canadian citizen, the Canucks. And over time, they became citizens and became full-time U.S. Workers. And I believe it was in the Clinton era when they both felt the hard need that they needed to vote. After that presidency, for whatever reason, politics aside, that's when they made the choice to say, we should really become U.S. citizens and want to do the vote. So we are the immigrant story. It's very cliche a little bit, but it is kind of how it happened. When they came over from Canada, there was intentions to work in the business. There was 5 children with my grandfather. All of them had some participation in the business at some different levels. The oldest son, his name's Ron, was running our Cleveland operation at that time. When my parents came, it was sort of I don't want to say it was a threat or not to his business, but as kind of business goes, sometimes there's more kids that want to participate than are room for kids to participate. So that's how they ended up in Andover. So there was no room in Cleveland, couldn't find a fit. Said, well, Andover's a wonderful place. My grandfather had bought a farm on Leon Road in the mid-'60s, and that's where they grew up, and that's where we built our house right next to them on Leon Road. So I'm a product of the Thompson Valley School Systems. Go Lakers. I love where I grew up, and I think it's a wonderful place, and I hope to someday be back sort of out this way so I can stretch my legs and arms out a little bit more than I do in the city right now. They really took the business from a struggling organization when they first did in the late 80s to, a relatively, they bought the business and it was in debt, significant amount of money. Was not really writing new business. It wasn't really in the growth stage. It was sort of plateaued. What they did was they injected a lot of effort, which I think was missing a little bit, and spent a whole lot of time growing that business and developing sort of a different model than the old model, which was just looking at things outside your traditional business to do. With that, they found a lot of different avenues that weren't even explored in our industry. We work with the Area Agency on Aging, which is a passport program, those of you are familiar with that. Wonderful state agency, and my mother and Governor Horn at this time helped start that program and really educated the Medicaid program on what things we could do in the home to keep these people out of hospitals and keep them out of nursing homes, which saves the system, obviously, significant dollars. So Andover's where I was born in Willoughby and raised in Andover my whole life. Currently, the reason our corporate office is there, quite frankly, is because land was very inexpensive. Building was pretty inexpensive at the time, and there was a lot of it. So just 3 miles down the road from where I grew up is where our corporate office is, out on 285 heading towards PA. If you really know the Andover landscape, it gets very busy from Memorial to Labor when all the tourists are in town for Thompson Lake. It's a fun place to be at that time. And that's where our corporate office is. We employ about 70 or so folks down there at those 2 buildings. It's about 25,000 square feet between the 2 of them. Office, warehouse, mix. Other than Andover and Asheville County, we cover over to approximately Toledo, down to Mansfield, over to West Virginia, typical West Virginia, and up from kind of Pittsburgh west. So I guess west of 79, western part of Pennsylvania. We do that through 7 locations, fixed locations. Then we have other pharmacies as well. We'll talk about a little later. A little bit about our industry, just to give you a background on what we do and why we do it. We were invented when hospital DRGs, and I see Tina back there, she's very familiar, came to life, which is basically the hospital got paid a fixed rate for certain things. It was no longer they stayed in there for 3 months, they got paid for 3 months. That model went away. So the hospital said, well, how the heck do we get them out of here safely? And who's going to take care of them? So it was born the home medical equipment market. So what we do is basically take someone from a hospital setting, a doctor's office, a skilled nursing center, whatever equipment they're on in the hospital, they typically need when they go home. Our job is to provide that at home, from anything from oxygen to a hospital bed to complex ventilation, whatever they do. There are certain limits, of course, in what we can and can't do at home, but for the most part, the equipment that they're on, if they're stable enough to go home, most people want to be home. Most people don't want to be in the hospital, so we have the unique pleasure of hopefully satisfying that need for them and getting out of a much more higher cost scenario where there's a little bit more chance for cross-contamination and other things, to a home environment where they ultimately, a large percentage of our population passes away within 14 months. We're in a chronic disease state management. We take care of those chronic people. So I grew up seeing that. It's an interesting perspective on life. And I grew up before the cell phone days when you were delivering. I'm 33. I'm not an old guy, but I tell these stories like I am. But where you go to home in the morning and there was a hospital set up, and that afternoon or even before you got there, the patient had passed away. It was an interesting perspective for me as a young kid. But I think certainly tied into very well what I do today, which is good. Our industry, from that, only makes up 1.4% of all Medicare spending. So all the stuff you see on TV, they're really not talking about us, generally. It's the doctors and the hospitals make up the lion's share of what Medicare pays out in money. Our little industry is, we think, very, very valuable to those systems, but the government doesn't talk about picking the money very well, right? So if it's a Part B benefit, the Part A stay of Medicare in the hospital, even if we're saving Part A dollars, they don't count that towards the Part B stay. They're not allowed to dynamically score certain things. So it's a challenge for us on the Hill when we're lobbying to say, look how much we save. They don't necessarily care. They want to see, what can we cut, and it doesn't matter what you saved on the Part B or Part D side, even, because we help with prescription medications as well. It includes things like wheelchairs, walkers, canes, crutches, all that stuff. It includes hospital beds, commodes, incontinence supplies, enteral nutrition for those people who can't feed themselves, wound care supplies, complex ventilation, oxygen, CPAP. Pretty much anything that you're going to get at home that you could get somewhere else is part of our industry. And even with all those things, prosthetics include legs, arms, everything, orthotics as well. Even with all that, still over 4% of spending, because it's it's a small margin business. It really is a volume business, but it's also a pretty cost-effective way to do things. We don't employ 200 doctors, and we don't do certain things that other healthcare institutions have to do. We don't have to do those things. There are a lot of opportunities, I think, in our industry. Let's just talk a little bit about opportunities and some of the challenges we're facing right now when we talk a little about healthcare. If anyone has any thoughts and comments, we can certainly get a spirited debate, I'm sure, about that. 2011 started the first year that boomers turned 65. Approximately, depending on who you read, who you believe, over the next 20 or so years, about 8,000 to 10,000 people are going to turn 65 every single day in this country. A lot more than ever used to be. We take care of people who are 65 and older. So for our company in general, there is certainly opportunity there for as far as demographics go. The problem and the challenge is going to be finding someone to pay for those services. And that's where the government and all of you come in. The government has a really negative view of the industry right now. For those of you who watch the news somewhat closely, the scooter stores, you see their commercials all the time, advertising. You can have this scooter for little to no money, or no, I didn't pay one red cent when they were driving around town, loving life. The service is fantastic, and the machines are great for the people who qualify for them. There are certain companies out there a little more aggressive with getting people qualified for services. That then comes back on their company, they get raided, like the scooter store did, and the FBI goes in and takes all their computers and takes all their employees and takes all their money. Because they're doing things wrong. I'm happy, because those guys were giving our industry a bad name, and they did it recently, in my opinion, on the news. So with all those things going on, opportunities there, utilization is going up, not because we're working the system, but because there's a lot more old people consuming. I refer to the government not in a negative way, but just instead of getting all in the regulatory agencies, the government solution generally to some of those things are to kill the mosquito with the sledgehammer, right? So if you look at what's happening, spending more money, we must be using too much, let's stop using as much, and let's maybe make it a little more difficult to have access to those certain things. I'm sure some of you experience that in your own personal healthcare plan. So what they've done for us, some of the challenges, they've reduced reimbursement, which is pretty simple. So all companies in our space get the exact same amount per month to do the same service. So if I send a certified EMT to the home to do the setup versus some guy I just met on the street, we all get paid the same, doesn't matter. So we're really competing on service. We're really not competing on price with each other. It's just really all about who gets better service to the end user and to the physicians. The government, I think, has sort of curtailed that a little bit with reductions in reimbursement. Over the past 7 years, our industry in general has been cut about 65% top revenue on all product categories combined. I can promise you we didn't put 65% to the bottom line in 7 years ago. Was the industry running a little bit fat, employing more people than maybe they could have or should have? Sure. Was it a lot more? Definitely not. So over the past 7 years, we've really focused on diversifying our company in general. We can get a little bit of that in a minute. There's been an increase in compliance for us. A lot of companies, a lot of the government new rules are basically saying, we'll pay you for it, but here's what you got to do to get the money the right way. So it's things like, now it's a little bit big brothery, but for those CPAP users in the room, if you're here, the CPAPs now, the low air and night wall, usually come with a wireless modem. So that modem watches you all night long, reports right back to us every morning how long you used it, how much your leak was, how your breath rates were. It's a frightening amount of information that we have to get because your insurance company says, well, we want to make sure that they're using it in a certain amount of nights and a certain amount of hours, which our patients are very nervous about. When we call them and say, hey, how'd you do last night on your machine? They're like, oh yeah, best night of sleep I've ever had. And then our customer service goes, well, that's interesting. It looks like you only worked for 13 minutes. Oh yeah. I woke up and threw it off. I couldn't use it. And then the truth comes. So it's good. I mean, it allows us to do better patient care and intervention. But the idea that we're watching that closely makes people very nervous. But it's just going to get worse as we go. And this isn't just the government plans. Private insurance plans are moving this exact same direction. Everyone's sort of moving this direction of if you're not using it, we're not paying for it, which I 100% agree with. I think to rely on us to report that is a little difficult. We don't get paid to do that. But it's still, in concept, makes perfect sense to me. I mean, we all pay tax dollars, and I want to go towards things that people are using. We've been audited to death. You probably see this in the news a little bit, maybe. I mean, constantly, people visit our offices in Andover, have their little badge, want to come in and I want to see these 400 things, and we pretty much have to say, okay, how long are you going to be here? And sometimes 5-6 days, they sit in our room and grind our business to a halt. And it's not because something was red flagged, it's just a normal course of business, things that just happen. So to do all these things, our job increases somewhat been to manage this sort of compliance data. So we have hired 3 or 4 new young ladies to just respond to these audits. Again, we don't get paid to respond to audits. So again, we're adding up costs and reimbursements reduction. You can kind of see the picture I'm drawing. It's not all gloom and doom, promise, but there are some significant challenges in our industry right now. Competitive bidding is one I won't go too much into because I could literally talk for 14 days about it and depress all of us. The government has basically selected to contract our business like they would a building to a builder. To say, here's the auction business in this area. How much can you do it for? Companies submit bids. They say sure, yes or no. And companies like us, potentially, this is 51 years, can be excluded from doing certain product categories for 3 years. So obviously that would hurt our top and bottom line pretty significantly. Luckily, we were able to bid and win a lot of bids where we operate. So we're still able to take care of Tina and all her patients and a lot of things that go on. So, but if you didn't, think about what that would have been. So we were savvy enough to get through the bid process. It's just going to keep happening, and reductions will keep happening. And the Affordable Care Act has got its own big ball of wax. There are a lot of things written in there that are directed at our industry that are very odd, in my opinion. They're going to require you all to have a face-to-face, in-person visit with your physician before prescribing any piece of durable medical equipment. So if you break your leg and you call your family physician because you've known him for 20 years and say, I need some crutches, can you call me a script, or can I get a script, or I need a new refill on my respiratory medication, can you just call it in? That no longer is going to be allowed. So now we're just going to add how many office visits right back into the system for a potentially $30 piece of equipment once every 3 months. Again, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then sequestration, believe it or not, and us written in there. So we took a 2% cut. Well, we'll take a 2% cut across the board again. So that's 65, and we'll go to 67, I guess, here shortly in May. And again, there's really no lobbying amount you can do to kind of fix that one. That's a done deal. So that's the wonderful picture of HMB. We really we love what we do. Ultimately, we take care of patients, though, and it's got a lot of rewards in itself. So what do we do to figure out how to fix all this? So Andover now has become a little epicenter of what I want to call a mini conglomerate. Really, for the last 7 years since I've come back on board since law school, we've been working to diversify as much as humanly possible our company. Get away from Medicare reliance, get away from Medicaid reliance, get away from private insurance reliance, and really find some cash models to do something different. We are an investor sort of just with cash and some management experience in a cloud computing company that is one of those things that it's either going to be a home run or a strikeout. I'm not quite sure yet. It's got some good traction, but who knows with something like that. A little bit out of our comfort zone, but something different, great opportunity, really distressed when they came to us, and we got a lot of equity for very little money. We started a couple of different pharmacies. We have a compounding pharmacy, which just got a lot of bad rep up in New England for killing a bunch of people, unfortunately, but ours is much safer than theirs, I promise. But we don't mix drugs the way they mix them, and they were doing things wrong altogether. So that's a whole new business line that's growing for us. That's about 3 years old. We started institutional retail pharmacies. We have 3 retail pharmacy locations, some in PA, some down south in Youngstown area. And we also we mix the medication packets for nursing homes. So those carts you see all the aides taken through the halls. We own those carts, we pack them full of meds, they do their rounds, and daily that's how we supply those nursing homes. Still within Medicare, so we're still a little reliant there, but Medicare has been very risk averse to messing with people's medications so far. So hopefully that trend will continue. We can still keep doing that. We now do some post-mastectomy supplies, which is a different model than we've done before. Some pediatric and adult ventilator programs, a little bit different, a little more complex. Again, no one wants to mess with women in pain and babies on vents. It's not something any legislator is going to stick their neck out to take a chunk out of. So we said, well, it's a population that needs served. Why not give it a shot? And they're going well. So what do we do in Andover? Our contribution, I guess, to our local economy, right? So we have about 70 employees down there in those 2 buildings, from your entry-level customer service to a lot of our management team that have been there for, our oldest now is 36 years. My grandfather hired Keith and has been in our biotech department for 36 years. Our customer service manager has changed my diapers, and that's not figuratively, that's literally happened. I'm not the boss, which is unique. We joke about it frequently. We don't talk about the details. It's very exciting for me personally to be able to have the resources that have been put in place. And our Andover folks, most of them, many of them went to PV. Some went and got degrees and came back. Some just were flipping burgers at McDonald's, and we're looking to do something a little bit different with their lives, and we're able to find a career with us, which is exciting. We have about 30 other employees with our other ventures, with the pharmacies and the other things we talked about that are, I guess, sort of half ours, some more. And then about 15 part-time folks that do deliveries and warehouse work and certain other things for us down there. Most of them live in Ashtabula, most of them live very close. None of them like to drive through the snow belt if they can avoid it to get to work, so they stay pretty close. And really, aside from just employing folks, which I think everyone in the room, or to some degree, has been experienced with, we try to do a lot of employee development, which I think is a little bit unique, especially to a company that's in Andover. We spend a lot of time, money, and effort, myself personally, and our president, Joe, training employees on what we call ask for action. I'll give you a really quick version. I think it's unique, and I'm not going to talk again about this forever. But what we do is really we take the employees when they come in from very different things. So literally we hire many folks from the service industry, from STNAs, from places where they haven't had exposure to really planning or really working their career themselves. They're sort of told, here's what you need to know, learn it, and then you'll work here, and all is good. We do a little bit differently. When we come in, we really teach the employees how to cope with a lot of what they're going to be thrown at. Our industry, believe it or not, we hire young men and women who need to know a lot of information, from insurance to how to set it up, to how to troubleshoot, to how to talk to a physician's office, to how to talk to a patient, how to talk to their nurse's aide. And we ask them, and I've done the job so I can understand their struggle, to learn a lot of information in a pretty short period of time. We understand that can be stressful, certainly, for someone to come on board. So we provide them with some tools to say, listen, we understand the stage of learning you're going to go through. We get it. You're going to come on, you're going to be happy as hell. You got a new job, new love in life. And then all of a sudden one day you're going to look up and say, holy crap, you know, there is a buttload I didn't even know and I don't know. And then a lot of people can freak out, absolutely can freak out in that scenario. And we really just say, listen, we know it's coming, don't freak out. Everyone went through the process, that person actually freaked out at some point. Don't let it happen, we'll move on, we'll get through it. So we're sort of from day one, literally this is part of our orientation plan is, it's going to happen, don't freak out, don't let it happen. Because we don't want to lose people. Andover doesn't have the largest hiring pool necessarily in the county, certainly not in the state. So when we do get someone, we want to make sure that they have the best opportunity to do well. Talk about planning, talk about how to write plans. We give them a very specific planning methodology based on consultative selling. They can put together and say, you know what, I pushed this button, but I think it might be better if I just pushed it this way. We say, great, I'd love to hear it. Let's put a plan in place, we just go out there, get it in front of me, and I personally review every plan that they put together and go over them with them. Part of the other process that I ask for action is interviewing our executive management team. So every new hire, from whatever center they go in, is required within 1 year time to sit down with me, Skype with my dad in Florida, if they can get them away from work. Our President Joe, our Vice Presidents, all of those folks get face-to-face, one-on-one time with the guy that pushes a broom to the new sales rep we hired in Cleveland, doesn't matter. And then within 1 year, after they've gone through all these different training programs, they actually sit down with Joe and I, and we certify them. So we sit down with an oral exam, we call it, I guess. People get very stressed out about it, but it's not as, if you're living the culture, it's not as bad as people make it out to be. And we just have a conversation and see if they're learning what they're learning. And if they're not, we help them identify those gaps. If they are, we congratulate them, give them a little pin, and it's very, and then they're charged with going and spreading the good word with the next new person and the next new person. It's been very successful for us. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of time. But the benefit that I've seen already, just in the short amount of time I've been here with folks who had no idea they could accomplish what they're accomplishing, which is exciting for me. You know, when someone comes in and says, you know, I flip pizza. It's like, literally, it was 100 yards away from your office my whole life, and now I'm here, and it's a year, and I've moved up, I've done this, I've already learned this about this, and it's an exciting experience to sit in those certifications and have them tell you how much they learned, and they had really no aspirations to even get to that point in life, period, which is very rewarding, and worth every penny of time we spend doing it, for sure. We talked about communication styles. It's a different course. It's the selling advantage, we call it, TSA. We talk a lot about perception gaps, how to close perception gaps. It's the sender's obligation to whoever's receiving that message to make sure that they hear what they want them to hear. And it's not just external customer service, right? They can use these with each other. So when you're in a call center, only now because it all is, it's a large group of women, because that's all that's in there right now, about 20 or so. They don't all get along all the time. I've experienced this. Some old, some young, some new, some veterans. And this absolutely helps them, sort of say, that phone call sounded, I don't think that phone call was as productive as it could have been. Here's what I would have done. In a very non-confrontational way, in a way that helps, really present them with good information, helps them learn, helps them feel part of the team, which is great. And part of the process is for them to write personal improvement plans, what we call PIPs, or personal development plans. I'm sure you've all seen them in some action plan format, where they are required to identify gaps in their learning, put it in a plan, and close that gap. Which, if they're doing that, then I don't have to do it. Their manager doesn't have to do it. They're constantly looking in the mirror saying, what do I need to get better at? Here's what it is. And it doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be a week or a year, a month. It depends on how long you've been there. But, early on in the process, they're writing a lot of plans and closing a lot of gaps, which then they can look through after 3 months and say, oh, look at how much I've accomplished. They got it right there in front of them. So we say a lot, what gets measured gets done. If they're putting it in paper, they're a lot more likely to, especially to show me, I review 1 million weight loss action plans. This is the new trend, right? So, and I'm hard on them. They give me a plan and it says, here's what I'm going to do. I take that plan, I put about 5 or 6 dates in my personal Outlook calendar. And it doesn't take too many emails for me to say, hey, did you get where you at? Did you run that? Did you put your 20 minutes in? Have them say, oh no, I didn't get to that. It doesn't take too many of those before they get a little embarrassed about it and start doing what's in the plan, which is the idea. It's human nature to put things off, so we try to assist in that. And it's not just about work things, it's about whatever they want to write. We have some with child care, we have some with weight loss is a big one. Education, a lot of people want to do more things. A lot of our employees are taking classes here. So we encourage all that, and it's through our planning process that we kind of allow it to happen. I have no idea where I'm on time. Let me give you a time check.
It's almost 9 o'clock.
Okay, very quickly. Future healthcare. In our space, in hospital space and doctor space, there's value-based purchasing, which is the big one right now in hospitals, where the government is holding the hospital's money and telling them they can have it back at the end of the year if they do certain things. That's the short version. Most hospitals are satisfying those goals pretty well so far, but they're going to get more and more stringent over time. Where we play into that is be a continuum, an extension of the hospital and the home. So when they leave the hospital has very little control if they come back or not. We do. We see them right when they go home. We see them in that months. We call them. Our program that we work with hospitals on doing is monitoring those patients. I use the term babysitting. I know it sounds negative, but we babysit those patients through those first 30 days to make sure we're working with that hospital to not have unscheduled readmissions. They're going to happen, but we can really truly reduce that rate if we really call them and have really good clinical phone calls with them. Again, we don't get paid for that, but it is a relationship that we can really gain some business from local hospitals, larger hospitals, and it's a program that they're looking to have be good. ACOs, the accountable care organizations, is big news, big hubbub, whether people are doing it or not doing it, everyone's in, everyone's out. I wish I could tell you which direction that's going, but again, ACOs are going to be required to partner with companies like ours to get people home. As part of that continuum, they're going to have to get home health involved. They're going to have to get ambulance service involved, the whole thing. And then they potentially will be doling out the cash for those services, so the hospital will come to the bank, and we would obviously work with the hospital to fix those things. And then, Obamacare, ACA, 1 million new bennies come into our Medicaid program this year with no increase in revenue.
Many people, I think, in the room or where I am, we come into contact with medical equipment when our parents become old, or in my case, parishioners, I go to their home, they need a wheelchair or a walker, and we know, okay, we go to the Ashtabula Senior Center and pay $25 and they'll loan us one, or the Jefferson Community Center, here pick a walker. A lot of the people don't know, how does that all connect with Seeley? I have an older gentleman who insists on, he goes and buys a wheelchair from Drug Mart. And I go, well, there's got to be a better way than that. How does that connection happen with?
Yeah, there is a better way. You just call us. Typically, the things that we do are all prescription driven, primarily. So there's a convenience factor walking into a drugstore with a credit card and saying, I just want that one, thank you, see you. It's a different process when they come to us. We're required to do certain different things. So yes, if they call and say, I'm just not getting around as much, I'd like to get a wheelchair, what our company does is we say, fantastic, and just need a little bit of information from you. Typically, we need to know your doctor. We need to know what's bothering you. Did you have a knee surgery? Knees getting a little tougher. And then we do the work. So we'll call the physician and say, hey, your patient called us. They said they needed a wheelchair. Do you agree or disagree? So yeah, that's fine. We send the doctor the right paperwork. They fill it out, send it back to us. If it all matches up, and of course their insurance is covered by their insurance, we take the wheelchair right to their house, instruct them on how to use it, and build their insurance form and collect any copays that are necessary. So it depends. I think the consumer market is changing. I really do. I think my parents, who are 61 this year, won't be submitting claims to their insurance. I think they're just going to go to the store and buy it. I'm just going to I'm not counting on my Social Security. It's a big surprise. I'm just going to go to the store and buy it. If my parents need something in a few years, I'm just going to go buy it for them. I think we're seeing a shift in our marketplace to that. And you'll see it actually with the way that we're selling. So these Max Wellness stores, you've heard of Max Wellness, they're new in the market. They're basically like a Brookstone for medical equipment, kind of a little higher end, really, really well-trained staff. It's the guy that opened Office Max. He sold and now he's doing something new. First store is actually in Legacy Village in Cleveland. They're beautiful, but I think it's a little ahead of the curve on the consumer. I don't think people are quite ready to say, I don't care if my insurance covers it, I'll pay anyway. But it's getting there. 5 years, 10 years, when access is limited based on all these programs, I think you'll be much more inclined to just say, I'm sick of waiting. Just, here you go. Here's my credit card. But in the interim, yeah, just have the phone and call, and our customer service people do it every day.
Okay, and often they are a little suspicious or worried about they don't have a lot of money, so they worry about going to a company who's going to then try and build things they don't need in there. And I know we're running out of time.
No, you're right, but
This is
we
where I'm trying to represent
them.
them.
Sure, yeah. And all of our stuff is driven by the prescription, so if they get billed for something that they didn't want, they should be mad at the doctor, not us. So, but when we talked to their doctor, we said, listen, this is all I want. This is it. There is something else that might make them more comfortable. There's a cushion for this thing. Well, we would talk to that patient before that happens, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Any other questions? Was that uninteresting? It's a confusing industry. It's going to change a lot from now until the next 3 years, specifically, probably 3 years after that. I don't know what we're going to be doing in 3 years, honestly. We're going to be doing what we're doing. The core business will not change, but our diversification plans will hopefully have ramped up to the fact that if the government keeps picking on us, I can look back at them and say, take a hike, I don't need it anymore, and shift our resources some different direction. And that's the freedom I want to have. We're not there yet, but we're really close. We're really close. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.